LoveLore Library. He couldn't help but be happy and continued, Your Majesty, since ancient times, women have always been a source of disaster. Your Majesty is the ruler of the Dark North, you should put the country and the people first, not to mention this woman with ulterior motives. If you leave her, not, do you, the people. Shen, you, and the people, Chen, Shen, she, I said. I, Shen. He, I, comma, he. He didn't have the coldness and ruthlessness of the past. Instead, he seemed to be easy to negotiate. Being easy to negotiate was much better than not listening to a few words of persuasion. Pang Shen tried to calm his tone and didn't want to touch his bad luck. He took a step back. Your Majesty, there are many beauties in the harem. There are all kinds of beauties. What if I only like If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, talk about life, find friends. Chapter 8:15. This, Pang Shen hesitated and quickly said, If Your Majesty only likes Miss Shen, I wonder if Your Majesty likes her beauty or her talent and personality. If it's talent, Your Majesty, I can definitely find a woman who is similar to her in this world. I guarantee that she will be more beautiful than Miss Shen. If the women of Feng Country are different from us, then I can also go to Feng Country personally and choose an outstanding woman for Your Majesty. I guarantee that Your Majesty will be satisfied. The man's cold lips curled into a cold smile. Since they are both women of Feng Country, why can't Your Majesty, Pang Shen tried to persuade him. This Shen Yueji is the imperial concubine of the Feng Country's emperor. An imperial concubine of a country came to Northern Underworld with Your Majesty. This isn't just because she is a woman of Feng Country. If the Feng Country's emperor knows about this, it will cause a war between the two countries. Southern Mountain and Feng Country have always been eyeing Northern Underworld. In this internal conflict, many of their spies have appeared. If they work together to attack Northern Underworld, Your Majesty, you will be putting the people of Northern Underworld in deep trouble. No matter if its father when he was still alive or Imperial Tutor Pang is a first-rank official in the court, they are respected and loved by the people of the capital. An emperor's ambition is undoubtedly to conquer the country and take over the country. Even without it will still be the same. Why is Imperial Tutor telling me this? Your Majesty. Seeing that the emperor didn't listen to him even after he said so much, the emperor was still stubborn. Okay. He finally made the biggest concession. Since Your Majesty insists on this, as an official, I naturally don't dare to say anything more. However, Your Majesty still needs to consider the matter of the Empress. Almost no one in the imperial court is willing to let this woman from the Feng nation be the Empress of the Dark North Kingdom. Not to mention her ulterior motives, her identity as the imperial concubine of Feng Country doesn't allow it. I hope Your Majesty will reconsider. If you really like that girl, you can make her a concubine first. As for the Empress, I am not talented, so I recommend myself. Although Warner is lively and active, she is my daughter after all. She is proficient in the 4 arts. In the capital, there are few women who can compare to her in terms of talent or background. After staying in the palace for so many years, she has learned some of the rules of the palace. Plus, Your Majesty has handed the Phoenix Seal to her for many years. The position of Empress is empty. If Your Majesty wants to confer an Empress, why don't you consider Wan? She has loved Your Majesty for many years. I believe that her feelings for Your Majesty will not be any worse than that woman from Feng Country. Bai Mingxiang's expression was indifferent. I want to make Empress, I just told Grand Tutor Pang and you, I didn't ask for your opinions. If you don't want to, then that's your own business, it has nothing to do with me, understand? Your Majesty. When Grand Tutor Pang heard this, his eyes widened. Your Majesty, if you do this, you will disappoint all the officials. Disappoint? The man smiled coldly, his voice was shallow, without the slightest emotion. Since you are disheartened, quickly elect the next emperor to assist, instead of always thinking about Jin alone. This North Dark Kingdom's throne, if any of you wants to sit, Jin can give it to you. Your Majesty. In this life, Pang Xin had never been afraid of anything. He had bled on the battlefield, but he had never blinked. If you want to talk about explosively cute concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yue literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find bosom friends. Chapter 8:16. The only thing he was afraid of was Brimming Shang not becoming the emperor. He didn't understand. Other emperors would fight for the throne even if they had to. But Brimming Shang didn't seem to have any interest in the throne since he was young. If he wasn't the only son of the late emperor. Did Pang Xin have to go through so much trouble to trick him into becoming the emperor? Plus, every time they had something, they had to ask the emperor to do it. They thought their threats were effective, but they didn't know that the emperor's threat was enough to make them swallow it. There was nothing they could do. He watched as the young and handsome emperor got down from his throne in front of him and left. Pang Xin didn't know how to stop him. Seeing Eunuch Lu walking out, he suddenly grabbed Eunuch Lu's hand. Eunuch Lu was shocked and turned to look at him. Grand Tutor Pang, what are you doing? Hurry up and let go of my hand, people will misunderstand if they see this. Pang Xin, letting go of his hand, Pang Xin covered his mouth awkwardly and coughed. Eunuch Lu, please don't misunderstand. I have something to ask you. Eunuch Lu looked at the emperor walking away and said respectfully to Pang Xin, Grand Tutor Pang, please ask. But ask quickly, I still have to serve the emperor. Pang Xin glanced at him. You must have seen the girl from the phone country. What does she look like? Oh. Eunuch Lu purposely kept him in suspense. He smiled and looked at him, not afraid of offending him. Grand Tutor Pang, you really want me to tell the truth? I ask you, and you answer truthfully. I naturally want to hear the truth. If not, why would I want to hear it? Then, Grand Tutor Pang, please don't be angry. Pang Xin frowned. Just tell the truth, I won't be angry. Your Majesty is the noble emperor and the number of beauties in the harem is innumerable. This servant has seen so many beauties for so many years and my eyes have seen enough. I thought that no matter what kind of beauty I see, I would not be stunned. But the appearance of Miss Xin still made me stunned. In terms of looks, she's even better than Imperial Consort Pang. His daughter's beauty was well known in the entire Northern Kingdom. To be honest, the number of people who were more beautiful than his daughter could be counted with one's fingers. He didn't expect that Feng country's imperial concubine Xin was actually so beautiful. He couldn't help but think of Xin Yueji, the eldest daughter of the Xin family's general, Xin He, who was known as the #1 beauty of the Feng nation. No wonder the emperor was head over heels in love with her. But that's not right. Thinking about it again, one seemed to have mentioned this Xin Yueji to me. When the emperor was pestered by Xin Yueji in Feng country, the emperor had always been impatient. However, because Xin Yueji was the eldest daughter of the Xin family, even if he was impatient, he couldn't do anything to her. How long had it been? Did the emperor really have to choose her? This made him even more convinced that what Wan said to him, the emperor must have been drugged by that woman from Feng country. Otherwise, the emperor's attitude towards her wouldn't have changed so quickly in such a short period of time. Thinking of this, he looked at Eunuch Lu. Eunuch Lu, you are the emperor's favorite, and your words carry a lot of weight in the harem. I have something to ask for your help with. If you want to talk about explosively cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 8:17. Eunuch Lu smiled. Grand Tutor Pang, you are flattering me. In terms of weight, who in the imperial court can compare to you, Grand Tutor Pang? As for the help that Grand Tutor Pang mentioned. After he smiled, he quickly hid the smile on his face. The change between smiling and not smiling was so fast. I won't help. It was a very blunt refusal. Pang Shen himself was shocked. In the past, when he entered the palace, he had fought with Eunuch Lu face to face and talked to him. He thought that he had never offended him, right? He didn't react for a moment when he said the word, I won't help. It was completely out of his expectation. Won't help. Does he know what I want him to help with? He hasn't said it yet. Eunuch Lu saw his expression and knew what he wanted to say. He shook his head and said calmly, Grand Tutor Pang, this servant has been by the emperor's side for so many years. There is an old saying that accompanying the emperor is like accompanying a tiger. This servant has been by the emperor's side all these years and has been safe and sound. Isn't it because this servant can distinguish the pros and cons and knows the way to survive? Since I am the emperor's man, I should be on the emperor's side. I shouldn't betray the emperor, hide it from the emperor, and do something that will make the emperor unhappy. Pang Shen's face darkened when he heard what he said. Eunuch Lu, you know that the woman from Feng country has ulterior motives. She is the imperial concubine of Feng country's emperor. How can she marry into Dark North Kingdom and become the Empress of Dark North Kingdom? She saw that the Emperor liked her and indulged her. Relying on the Emperor's love and indulgence, she committed all sorts of crimes. If you don't unite with this official at this time, you're not siding with the Emperor, but harming him. Do you understand? Grand Tutor Pang can't slander Miss Shen just because his daughter is neglected by His Majesty. Although Miss Shen's identity can't be exposed, at least I have talked to her a few times. She is never spoiled when she does things, and she won't do whatever she wants because His Majesty likes her. She only does what she should do and what she shouldn't do. She won't deliberately please someone, and she won't deliberately provoke or offend someone. It's rare to see such a quiet and indifferent girl in the back palace. How can it be like what Grand Tutor Pang said, that she has ulterior motives? Eunuch Lu sneered. I won't hide it from Grand Tutor Pang. No matter when it comes to looking at people or doing things, I do things based on the feeling they give me. When I interact with Imperial Concubine Pang has a smile on her face, but it's as if there's a needle hidden in her heart. I don't know how many times she has scolded my eunuch in a place I don't know. In comparison, I prefer the truth that Miss Shen brings to my family. So. His voice softened, probably because he saw Pang Shen's ugly expression. After all, he was also a grand tutor of a country. Although he was a favored person by the emperor's side, he was still a servant. A servant was far from qualified to be arrogant in front of a first-grade grand tutor. This servant is not on His Majesty's side, but on Miss Shen's side. Grand Tutor Pang is so angry that His Majesty favors a girl from another country. Without knowing the course of events and the situation, he hastily concluded that Miss Shen has ulterior motives. Grand Tutor Pang, you definitely don't know what Imperial Concubine Pang has done in private. In the face of his words, Pang Shen's old face finally couldn't keep a straight face. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute beloved concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 8:18. Squeak. The female ghost finally couldn't hold on any longer. She wailed miserably and trembled under the demon-vanquishing mirror before gradually shrinking. On the dam, Jin Siyu and the others finally heaved sighs of relief. Zhang Tianxi continued pressing down on the demon-subduing mirror, not daring to slow down at all. The female ghost continued to shrink until she was only the size of a palm, completely suppressed under the demon-subduing mirror. Zhang Tianxi was overjoyed. He shook open the Heavenly Master Soul Collecting Banner, intending to keep it. She was too strong. He could only take it back first and then think of a way to destroy it. But at this moment, Su Su suddenly shouted, "Cousin, someone's flying over the water." Past. Zhang Tianxi was stunned. He didn't know what kind of situation it was. Because Zhang Tianxi was at the bottom of the dam that was taller than a person blocked his line of sight, so Zhang Tianxi could not see the situation above. It's Chen Su. This guy knows how to float on water. His feet touched the water and he flew over. Jin Siyu shouted. Wen Qian also said, he's not drifting on water. He must have been possessed by the Grand Master of the Maoshan sect. He's very powerful. As a disciple of the Dao sect, Wen Qian was more knowledgeable than Jin Siyu about the various sects' Dharma spells. Fuck, it's him again. Zhang Tianxi instructed Gong Ziguei and Tian Xiaohe. Yinyang boy, stop him. Lure him somewhere else, pay attention to your own safety, and don't block his way. Wen Qian, Susu, protect your chrysanthemum and that thing. Everyone agreed and went their separate ways. Gong Ziguei and Tian Xiaohe hovered in the air, stirring up a whirlwind on the surface of the pond. The whirlwind wrapped around a large pile of broken grass and stood in front of Chen Su. Su Su and Jin Siyu rushed to the fish farmer's hut to protect their chrysanthemums. Wen Qian put on the hood and hid behind the hut. She held the scarecrow that she had prepared in advance, ready to launch a sneak attack using the Chimenduanjia. Under the bright moonlight, Chen Su tapped his feet on the surface of the water, spread his arms, and swooped down like a giant bat. Gong Ziguei and Tian Xiaohe had just started spinning when Chen Su arrived. With a loud bang, the grass in the middle of the whirlwind was hit by Chen Su's head and immediately scattered. Ah! Tian Xiaohe and Gong Ziguei were at the periphery of the whirlwind, but they still suffered a great impact. They screamed and flew to the sides. Fortunately, it wasn't a head-on collision. Otherwise, the two ghost children wouldn't have been able to withstand it. It was even possible that their souls would have been destroyed. After the collision, Chen Su's momentum slowed down. He turned around and lightly landed on the dam, standing next to the fish farmer's hut. What kind of monster is this? How dare you help the evildoer? The Mao Mountain sect leader is here. Those who obey me will live, and those who stand in my way will die. Chen Su shouted before he landed on the ground. It was still the same as before. Before the person arrived, the awesomeness arrived first. He first revealed his identity as the sect leader of Mao Mountain. Wen Qian didn't say anything. She hid behind the house, raised her hand, and threw the scarecrow out. There's another ambush. Chen Su was taken aback. He quickly turned around and swung his lightning palm down. After all, he was the Mao Mountain sect leader. His skills were not just for show. He had the demeanor of a hero. However, Wen Qian had already used the scarecrow as cover to switch positions. She turned around from the other side of the hut, leaped into the air, and kicked Chen Su. Chen Su lost his footing. He wanted to dodge when he heard the wind behind him, but it was too late. Bam! Wen Qian's kick landed squarely on Chen Su's right shoulder. Chen Su was currently possessed by his grandmaster. His body was as tough as an iron tree, and he wouldn't have been bothered by punches and kicks. However, Wen Qian's angle of attack was ingenious. She took advantage of the moment when Chen Su turned around. She used 30% of her strength to borrow 70% of Chen Su's strength. Chen Su staggered and fell backward. He landed on the surface of the water with a splash, creating a huge splash. The poor Mao Mountain sect leader did not even get a good look at the assailant's face. Wen Qian didn't have it easy either. She felt a strong rebound force after her kick landed. Her entire body was pushed back toward the bottom of the dam. Coincidentally, Zhang Tianxi had already retrieved Ning Fangmin's soul. He looked up and saw Wen Qian falling. He quickly opened his arms and caught her in midair. However, Wen Qian's fall was too strong for Zhang Tianxi to handle. He fell on his butt. Fortunately, they were in a farmland. The straw was still laid out in the fields after the autumn harvest. If he had fallen on the cement, he would have broken his tailbone. "Are you all right?" Zhang Tianxi asked in a low voice. "I'm fine." Wen Qian straightened herself up from Zhang Tianxi's arms. Zhang Tianxi was relieved. He got up and rushed to the top of the dam. Wen Qian quickly caught up with him. However, when they reached the top of the dam, Zhang Tianxi saw Chen Su lying motionless in the water like a dead man. Did Wen Qian kill Chen Su? Zhang Tianxi was sweating profusely. He turned around and asked, "Why isn't he moving?" "I don't know. I just kicked him," Wen Qian said in a low voice. "Let's take a look." Zhang Tianxi dived into the water, grabbed Chen Su's hair, and dragged him to the shore. Chen Su did not move at all, allowing himself to be manipulated. Jin Siyu and Su Su came out of the fish farmer's hut and looked at the unconscious Mao Mountain sect leader. Zhang Tianxi and Su Su checked Chen Su's condition after they laid him down on the dam. Gong Zigui and Tian Xiaohe, who had sustained serious injuries from the earlier attack, were trembling as they floated over to Chen Su, who was lying on the ground, not daring to approach him. "He's not dead. It must have been too tiring to hunt down Ning Fangmin for the past 2 days, and he forced himself on Grandmaster. He must have fainted after falling into the water," Zhang Tianxi said after checking on Chen Su. Su Su also agreed and nodded repeatedly. "That scared the hell out of me. I thought I killed the Mao Mountain sect leader." Wen Qian breathed a sigh of relief. If Chen Su really died, it would be a major incident in the world. Not only Wen Qian, but even Zhang Tianxi would have a hard time explaining himself. Zhang Tianxi stood up, waved his hand and said, "Pack up, take your things and leave first. Chen Su is fine. I'll wait here for him to wake up." Wen Qian and Jin Siyu looked at each other. They packed up the chrysanthemum and the cauldron, then returned to the villa with Su Su and the 2 ghost children. Zhang Tianxi was in a good mood. He calmly sat on the shore and cultivated while waiting for Chen Su to wake up. However, Chen Su had not woken up yet. 2 figures walked toward the south side of the shore. They were looking around in a hurry. Zhang Tianxi looked at them in the moonlight and chuckled. It was Su Sen and Hu Ku pretending to be the Condor heroes again. Su Sen and his wife also saw Zhang Tianxi. They quickened their pace and asked loudly, "Who's that sitting over there? Are you fellow Daoist Chen Su?" Zhang Tianxi was sitting on the ground. He and his wife had not recognized him yet. Seeing Su Sen and his wife approaching, Zhang Tianxi stood up, pointed at Chen Su on the ground, and said with a smile, "The one sitting just now is not fellow Daoist Chen Su. The one sleeping here is your fellow Daoist Chen Su." At the same time. Chapter 8:19. So that's how it is. Shuangxi showed a look of understanding. She had always believed in Mrs. words, including these 2 days in Zhenyang Palace. To be honest, she thought that Miss had forgotten about it when Miss didn't pay her respects to the Empress Dowager. She was really worried for Mississippi. Who didn't know that the Empress Dowager's words carried the most weight in the imperial harem? Plus, the Empress Dowager was the Emperor's biological mother. She was afraid that if Miss didn't go to see her, people would talk about it and there would be people with bad intentions gossiping in the Empress Dowager's ears, ruining Miss's reputation and causing the Empress Dowager to have prejudice and estrangement with Mississippi. There's no one in the imperial harem that I need to worry about or please. The only one I'm worried about now is Mo Wushang. She sighed. With her status as the imperial consort of the Feng country, if he insisted on making her the empress, not only would it be difficult to explain to the imperial court, but even the people of the northern underworld would have something to say about his actions. She had long accepted her identity as the empress. To her, it didn't matter whether she did it or not, as long as Mo Wushang treated her sincerely. "Miss, are you worried about the son-in-law?" "Worried about me for what?" A man's deep voice came from behind. Shuangshi was so scared that she hurriedly knelt on the ground. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Shen Yueji turned around and was about to bow down. A strong and large hand supported her firmly. The man's deep eyes landed on her face, which didn't have any makeup on. After seeing her, all that was left was gentleness and deep affection. "Didn't I say it before? There's no need for such formalities between you and me. That was in the past. You were the regent of Feng country and I was the imperial consort of Feng country. Our identities were the same. But it's different now. You're the emperor of the North Underworld. I should pay my respects to you. Now that everyone in the imperial harem is looking at my mistakes, I naturally can't let them hold anything against me." The man's dark eyes darkened and he held her in his arms. "Her, you don't need to care about these rules and other people's words. You only need to know that no matter what happens, I will protect you." Listening to the man's strong heartbeat, Shen Yueji curled her lips and smiled. "I know." She had always known how much he doted on her and how much he had done for her. "I thought you would have a good sleep today. I didn't expect you to wake up so soon." Seeing that she seems to be in good spirits, the man lovingly scratches her pretty nose. Shen Yueji blushed when she heard that. Almost immediately, she thought of him and her last night. She blushed and pushed the man away. "Don't you have a pile of memorials to go through in the imperial study? Why are you back so soon?" There were indeed more memorials than usual, but they were all impeachment memorials. They were all about how to threaten him and how to force him to not make her the empress with death. Mo Wushang didn't want to look any more after looking at a few. "These are all unimportant things. You just came to the northern underworld. How about I show you around?" Shen Yueji's expression changed. "That." She averted her gaze. "I'm not feeling too well. I'm afraid I can't go too far. If you want to relax, you can go alone." "I have to go back," she cried out in alarm as she was carried by Mo Wushang. She subconsciously wrapped her arms around the man's neck. Worried that she would fall, she buried her head in the man's arms and said, "Mo Wushang, what are you doing? Put me down." Chapter 820. "I'll carry you there." "No. People will gossip if they see us." The man's footsteps paused. His voice no longer carried a hint of a smile. Instead, it carried a hint of melancholy. I hope that the way you and I get along is like a normal family. You don't have to worry because of my identity. There's nothing between us. There are too many people in the harem. If they see us, my reputation will be tarnished." The man snorted. "I'm here. Who dares to talk? If they dare to talk nonsense, I'll cut off their tongues." Eunuch Lu chased after him for a long time before catching up to him. However, the moment he caught up, he heard the emperor's words. He was so frightened that he quickly covered his mouth. Mo Wushang carried her to the Sun and Moon Lake. After walking around the lake, they went to the pavilion. The man didn't seem to feel tired at all. He walked from dawn to dusk. Although they had met many concubines during this period, they had finally met the emperor face to face. They were about to bow to him, but unexpectedly, the emperor they missed didn't even pay attention to them. He directly held the beautiful woman in his arms and walked away. It was as if they didn't exist. They had been in the palace for a while. In order to gain the emperor's favor, they used all their skills. Finally, when they were told that the emperor wasn't in the palace, they behaved for a while. After the emperor returned, they tried again. They didn't get the news as fast as Pang Yuan. They didn't have a family background like Pang Yuan, so they could send people to investigate. They had only just found out about Xin Yueji's identity. They had also just found out about the emperor's love for this woman from the phone country. Originally, they wanted to destroy Xin Yueji's prestige. They weren't convinced that this woman from another country was so good that she could gain the emperor's favor. Now that the emperor walked past them, their thoughts of finding trouble with him stopped instantly because of the emperor's presence. Because Mo Wushang gave them the feeling that the emperor could ignore them. However, if they dared to find trouble with Xin Yueji, they would definitely suffer a fate worse than death. Along the way, Xin Yueji had seen countless beauties in Mo Wushang's harem. Although she knew that he had no feelings for them, Xin Yueji felt flustered and uncomfortable just by looking at him. She pushed the man's chest. "There's a pavilion ahead. I want to come down and rest first." Upon hearing this, Mo Wushang carried her to the pavilion and carefully placed her down. Looking at her wrinkled little face, a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. "Jealous? Jealous?" These two words made Xin Yueji very uncomfortable. She glared at him fiercely. "Do I look like the kind of person who will be jealous?" Mo Wushang nodded. I only have you in my heart." "I know, I just don't like them." All of them clearly knew that this man's thoughts were not on them, but they still stared at him. Their expressions, eyes, and gazes seemed to want to stick to him. In short, it made her very uncomfortable, but she was in someone else's territory, and she didn't want to be so ruthless, so she could only bear with it. However, even though she had tolerated it, she was extremely displeased in her heart. Paw. Chapter 8:21. You slut, do you really think that just because concubine may have praised you a few words, you can rely on a new backer? I'm warning you, as long as I'm here, you'll never have a chance to turn over. In the quiet pavilion, there were suddenly a few sounds of arguing. Looking for the sound, Xin Yueji looked towards the center right and saw a few colorful figures gathered together in an imperial garden on the right. Because it was a little far away and those flowers and plants were really an eyesore, she could only see the rough outline and the sound of women arguing. And the woman in white who was kneeling on the ground and did not dare to raise her head, letting her hit and scold her, trembling all over. "Wu Jiaoyi, I beg you, let my concubine Mei go. My concubine Mei will always remember your kindness and never dare to ride on your head. I beg Wu Jiaoyi, on account of my concubine Mei's years of loyal service to you, you lowly servant, when the master is speaking, is it your place to interrupt? Someone, throw this slut into the water for me." The sound became more and more chaotic and the noise became louder and louder. Then she looked at the man's gloomy face. It seemed that the noise over there made the man uncomfortable. Xin Yueji couldn't help curling her lips. Looking at the man's unhappy face, she didn't know why, but in her heart, she felt much more comfortable. She poked him with her hand. "Hey, Mo Wushang, those are all the women in your harem. Although Zhaoyi's position is not high, but that woman's appearance is quite outstanding. You see the one kneeling on the ground? Dressed in white, like a fairy, not eating the food of the world, are you sure you don't want to help her? You know, now is the time when the beauty needs your help, maybe you help her this time, His lips were blocked. Shin Yueji was shocked and her eyes widened. The man bit her delicate lips evilly. His voice was hoarse and threatening. But I was too gentle to last night, so that can still say these words. Hearing him mention last night's matter, Shin Yueji's little face, with a swish, burst red again. She directly used her hand to block his mouth. Don't say any more. Eunuch Lu. Your Majesty, your servant is here. Drive those who are in the way away. Yes. Lu Eunuch was also flustered, especially when he saw how affectionate the Emperor and young Lady Shin were, yet this reckless person came to disturb them. They really didn't care about the occasion when they quarreled. Each and every one of them had an annoying face. Usually, they pretended to be gentle and considerate, but today, they didn't know that the Emperor was here. Didn't they all reveal their true colors? Eunuch Lu sighed and went to chase them away. In the end, when the kneeling servant saw him, it was as if she had seen a life-saving straw. She grabbed the hem of his clothes and said, Eunuch Lu, is His Majesty here? Was the Emperor here? Your Majesty, please save my mistress. If your Majesty doesn't save this servant's mistress, she will be beaten to death by Wu Jiaoyi. Your Majesty. That lowly servant girl cried out loudly as if she had suffered great grievances and torture. Then, he looked at the woman in white who was being bullied on the ground. From the beginning to the end, her head was lowered, and she did not beg for mercy, nor did she say a word. Only half of her face could be seen. She was indeed a beauty. On the other hand, the person who hit her had an arrogant and despotic face. After seeing Eunuch Lu, his expression changed completely. At the beginning, he was baring his fangs and brandishing his claws, and his face was fierce, but now, he was like a little girl who didn't know the world. If he wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yue Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 822. It was as if she had arrived at an unknown place. She didn't know what was going on. His Majesty. Wu Jiaoyi's lips trembled as she looked at Eunuch Lu in disbelief. Her eyes darted around, as if she was looking for Mo Wushang. Eunuch Lu was the Emperor's favorite. Wherever the Emperor was, he would be there. As long as he appeared, the Emperor would also be there. He would never leave the Emperor's side and wander around the harem alone. Thinking about it, the Emperor must be tired from dealing with the memorials and came here to relax. Thinking of how she had attacked Qiu Han just now, did the Emperor see it? Did the Emperor feel sorry for Qiu Han? That's why he sent Eunuch Lu to warn her. Yes, that must be the case. This foxy woman always pretended to be weak and pitiful, making people think that she had suffered a lot of grievances. Wu Jiaoyi's heart was filled with hatred, but because of Eunuch Lu's presence, the Emperor must be watching her in the dark. If she made a move on Qiu Han at this time, but, she gritted her teeth and explained, Eunuch Lu, is the Emperor really here? Where is the Emperor? She wanted to see the Emperor and explain it to him personally. It wasn't without reason that she hit Qiu Han, but this woman was too cheap. When she was a maidservant, she treated her well. But this woman actually betrayed her. Such a lowly maidservant betrayed her because of some benefits. What was the use of keeping her alive? But she, with her own weak appearance, sought refuge with Mei Feinyang, and was promoted to the same position as her by Mei Feinyang. Not only could she be on equal footing with her, she also had such a big backer like Mei Feinyang. Although every time she hit her, scolded her, and bullied her, she did not fight back. She knew that the purpose of doing so was just to gain sympathy. After knowing her thoughts, every time she hit or scolded her, she would find a place where no one was around. However, she did not expect to bump into the Emperor. She thought the place she found was quiet and secluded enough, but she did not expect to bump into the emperor. Her intestines were almost green with regret. If she had known that she would meet the emperor here, she wouldn't have. Eunuch Lu had long accepted the matters in the harem. Sometimes, what he saw with his own eyes might not be true, and what he heard might not be true. Therefore, he did not intend to say much to Wu Jiaoyi. He just wanted to ask them to move aside. She didn't want to disturb His Majesty and Miss Shin from relaxing and ruin their good mood. As for the maidservant who was being beaten, she kept tugging at the hem of his clothes, unwilling to let go. She looked delicate and pitiful, as if the person who had been wronged wasn't her master, but herself. Eunuch Lu, her ladyship was originally a maidservant and has been by Wu Jiaoyi's side since she was young. All these years, she has worked hard for Wu Jiaoyi. Her ladyship has always been loyal and has never complained. Wu Jiaoyi, on the other hand, is cruel and merciless. She would hit my concubine if it was heavy, and scold her if it was light. These days, my concubine's body is covered with scars, big and small. But my imperial concubine was grateful for Wu Jiaoyi's nurturing of her, and had always silently endured, never having the slightest complaint. Until one day, imperial concubine Mei bumped into my imperial concubine in the imperial garden, and had a good impression of my imperial concubine. After sending people to inquire many times, I found out that my imperial concubine was Wu Jiaoyi's servant girl. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent gets into trouble, follow Yuda Literature on WeChat chatting about life and looking for a bosom friend. Chapter 823. So she took the initiative to find Wu Jiaoyi and asked for my concubine. She even gave Wu Jiaoyi a lot of benefits. Who would have thought that Wu Jiaoyi treated imperial concubine Mei and my concubine with completely different attitudes? After imperial concubine Mei left, Wu Jiaoyi hung my concubine up and wrapped her in a quilt and beat her until she was on the verge of death. Not only that, Wu Jiaoyi also lied to imperial concubine Mei that my concubine was seriously ill and could only be sent to her after she recovered. Just like that, it dragged on for more than 2 months. In these 2 months, I don't know how Wu Jiaoyi tortured my concubine. Finally, she came to imperial concubine Mei's side. Because my concubine really liked imperial concubine Mei, she was promoted to imperial concubine Mei. But I didn't think. The little maid cried and covered her mouth. This servant thought, the imperial concubine has the Mei concubine's care, in this harem, who does not know the identity of the Mei concubine, other than the imperial concubine, no one would dare to disrespect the Mei concubine. But this servant didn't think that even with imperial concubine Mei's care, Wu Jiaoyi still didn't put my concubine in her eyes. She still beat and scolded her, treating her like an animal. Imperial concubine Mei is kind and has been enduring silently until now. Eunuch Lu, my concubine, is really pitiful. She has never made any big mistakes, but Wu Jiaoyi treats her like this again and again. Eunuch Lu, I beg you to tell His Majesty to save my concubine. If His Majesty still doesn't say anything, my concubine really won't be able to live. From the beginning to the end, the woman in white kept her head down and didn't say a word. Even when the servant girl cried for help, she didn't seem to hear it. Eunuch Lu was, after all, an experienced and knowledgeable person. He had seen many women in the inner palace and their methods. Now, he was moved by the servant girl's words. He looked at the woman in white who was covered in blood. Even her face was beaten beyond recognition. He couldn't see her face clearly. Only the indifferent aura around her made people feel that she wasn't that annoying. The maidservant's words and plea for help, why would he need to pass on the message? It was likely that the emperor had already heard it clearly. If the emperor wanted to help, he would have already come over. Moreover, he wouldn't have remained silent until now. For a moment, Eunuch Lu was in a difficult position. Previously, he had said those words to Grand Preceptor Pang. The reason why he had been able to stay by the Emperor's side for so many years and his status had always been respected was because he knew how to act according to the situation. He knew what he should do and what he should not do. For example, he had compassion for the person in front of him, but he didn't know if the Emperor also had compassion. Even if the Emperor had one, but the Emperor still had Miss Shin by his side. He could also see that this Miss Shin seemed to be a little narrow-minded. You don't like other women by the Emperor's side. And the Emperor was also very indulgent and flattering her. Therefore, for a moment, Eunuch Lu felt that this was the first time in his life that he had felt so troubled. He really didn't know whether to say it or not. She saw that the man was still sitting there indifferently. Shin Yueji poked the back of his hand. Did you hear that? She has taken the initiative to ask you for help. After all, you are her man. No matter what, you have to make a stand, right? Make a stand. The man looked at her in amusement. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 824. Shin Yueji choked. This kind of thing happened to Pang Yuan quite a few times. In terms of methods, Pang Yuan's methods were unparalleled in the harem. Just her cruelty alone was not something others could compare to. He had never cared about Pang Yuan's affairs, let alone theirs. Seeing that the man really had no intention to care, she smiled and said, "Since you don't want to care, we have nothing to do anyway. Let's see who is more scheming." Oh. The man looked at her and slightly raised his eyebrows. Are you interested in this matter? Compared to enjoying the scenery, this matter is really more interesting, isn't it? The man gently stroked the hair behind her ear and smiled, yes. As long as you are happy. Then, between the two, do you think the violent woman is more wrong, or the woman who has accepted her fate and never said a word is more scheming? What do you think, I'm asking you. Ji should also know that I have never cared about other women. If you don't pay attention, just follow your feelings. Let's make a bet, how about it? What's the bet? Shin Yueji proudly raised her eyebrows. The bet is that if you lose, you are not allowed to touch me for a month. She was serious about this bet. She found that this man was really too much for her when it came to sex, so she needed to rest for more than a month. Otherwise, after seeing that the man heard her bet, his face, which was still gentle, changed in an instant and became very heavy. He dangerously narrowed his eyes. You should know that I will not agree to such a bet. To him, winning or losing was just to make her happy, not to make such a big bet like her. He had been obsessed with her taste for the first time and could not leave. If he was not allowed to touch her for a month, no doubt it did not seem to kill him. This girl. Mo Wushang really wanted to laugh and be angry at the same time. His dark eyes moved away from the woman and fell on another place. He stared at the calm lake for a while and then looked at her again. I won't bet with you. His reply was very righteous, and his refusal was also very decisive, leaving no leeway. Shin Yueji, the young girl, stood up and walked away. What kind of emperor are you? You don't even dare to bet with me. I despise you from the bottom of my heart. Mo Wushang got up and quickly caught up with her. He very naturally put his arm around her waist. I'd rather be looked down upon by than not being able to go to bed for a month. Hearing this, Shin Yueji's pretty face couldn't help but turn red. You're not serious, there are so many people here. Double happiness. Miss? Go and tell Eunuch Lu that His Majesty won't care about this matter. Also, tell Wu Jiaoyi that when you cut the grass, you need to eliminate the roots. Since you don't like her and feel that she's scheming, you might as well just kill her. If you keep going back and forth like this, those who don't know will probably pin the blame on her. Isn't it not worth it? Yes, miss, this servant will go and tell them now. Shen Yueji glanced at the man behind her. Mo Wusheng, you won't be angry that I casually dealt with your woman, right? It was clearly just a questioning tone, but Mo Wusheng inexplicably heard a threat from the woman's tone. He couldn't help but laugh and touched her hair that was bristling. Why would I? To chat about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, WeChat followed Yudu literature. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 825. Shuang Shi ran over and whispered something into Eunuch Lu's ear. Wu Zhaoyi's face turned pale. She was afraid that the emperor would punish her if he found out that she was so vicious. Death was a small matter, but if her family was implicated because of this, the emperor would treat this scheming bitch differently. Thinking of this, she was furious and furious. But she didn't dare to show it. Even the threatening gestures she showed just now were much more restrained. She stood there obediently, but her body was shivering. On the other hand, the woman who was kneeling on the ground and didn't say anything from the beginning to the end had a sharp glint in her eyes. But she didn't say anything. On the contrary, the corner of her mouth curled up proudly. But before her complacency could last for long, she saw Eunuch Lu's eyes flash with understanding after hearing Shuang Shi's words. He said to Wu Zhaoyi, Lady Zhaoyi, Miss Shen and His Majesty are admiring the flowers in the imperial garden. If you want to punish this lowly servant, then go somewhere else. Don't disturb Miss Shen here. You should know that Miss Shen is favored now. No matter who you offend, you can't offend the emperor's favorite, right? Wu Zhaoyi understood Eunuch Lu's words and quickly nodded in agreement. He was surprised. He probably didn't expect that the woman from the Feng nation would also be here. She had just come to the northern underworld kingdom, but she swaggered into the imperial garden with the emperor. From this, it could be seen how much the emperor cared about her and how much he doted on her. In the imperial harem, which woman would be able to get the emperor to put aside his official duties and play with her? Even Pang Yuan, who had a high status in the Pang family, an imperial concubine Pang had been in the palace for so many years, the emperor had never gone out with her. Thinking that she might not have offended the emperor, but Shen Yueji, Wu Zhaoyi had an indescribable feeling in her heart, but she was more afraid. Most of the women in this world would behave themselves in front of the emperor, and this woman from Feng country was no exception. She was afraid that she would tell the emperor that Wu Zhaoyi's methods were cruel and vicious. How could she treat a weak woman so cruelly? This would make the emperor hate her even more. The more Wu Zhaoyi thought about it, the more afraid she felt. Sisi nodded in agreement. Seeing her like this, Shuang Shi smiled. Wu Zhaoyi, my miss asked me to pass a message to you. Wu Zhaoyi raised her head to look at her. Although the woman in front of her was dressed like a palace maid, her clothes were different from the clothes of the servants of the North Dark. She was just a maid, but when she spoke to her, her tone was neither servile nor overbearing. There was no arrogance of a superior, and there was no contempt or timidity. For some reason, Wu Zhaoyi felt closer to her. Miss. Miss, please speak. Young Miss said that weeds must be removed by the roots. Since Wu Zhaoyi doesn't like the person in front of her, why didn't she just kill him? Wouldn't that make things easier? Ignoring everyone's shocked expressions, Shuang Shi smiled faintly and continued, instead of letting the other live and putting on a weak and pitiable appearance, Wu Zhaoyi will vividly display the image of a wicked person every time. I'm afraid that no matter if it's the bystanders or the spectators, at first glance, they will think that Wu Zhaoyi is too domineering, too vicious, too narrow-minded, unable to tolerate a pitiful person. Who would think about your past with others, Wu Zhaoyi? Speaking up to this point, Shuang Shi saw tears in Wu Zhaoyi's uneasy eyes. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 826. She stopped talking. Miss means that instead of torturing her and being criticized by others, it's better to just kill her and end it all. It's not strange for a woman to die in the harem. How dare you? It was the palace maid who spoke first. Her tone was sharp and her eyes were ferocious. You are just a lowly servant from Phone Country. What right do you have to interfere with the North Sea's matters? My lady is the person that concubine May values the most. How dare you, lowly servant, instigate Wu Jiaoyi to kill my lady? Shuang, she didn't care about her arrogance at all. Who does concubine May think she is? In Phone Country, my miss doesn't even care about the empress. Coming to the North Sea, she is naturally a royal concubine, not to mention a mere concubine May. Wu Jiaoyi, my miss has delivered the message. What you want to do and what you should do, it's all up to you. In short, Miss said to remove the roots when cutting the grass. It's not just words. If you are afraid of the concubine May behind this woman, you can push this responsibility to my Mississippi. Wu Jiaoyi looked at her awkwardly. She and Xin Yueji didn't know each other, but she still took the initiative to help her. Everyone in the palace knew that she bullied this bitch every day. It had become a common occurrence. In other people's eyes, she was gentle and kind, but she was the opposite, vicious and sinister. Everyone didn't like her. She didn't think that Xin Yueji would take the initiative to help her and even say these words. These words clearly showed that she trusted her. Her eyes turned red. This was the first time she felt that she was trusted and protected by someone. Even the woman in white who was kneeling on the ground paled. That woman's words were obviously biased. Without a doubt, it was a talisman on Wu Jiaoyi's heart that pushed her to her death. Before, Wu Jiaoyi didn't want to kill her because she was attached to concubine May. She didn't dare to be too ruthless. If concubine May investigated, she wouldn't be able to escape the responsibility. But she didn't think that this Xin Yueji, in front of the emperor, not only did she not protect her, she even took the initiative to help Wu Jiaoyi and instigated her to kill her. Wasn't she afraid that the emperor would think that she and Wu Jiaoyi were one and the same? She had long received the news from Jingyang Palace that the emperor would pass by this place. She also knew that she would meet Wu Jiaoyi here because she was the one who had ordered her men to control everything behind the scenes. The servants in the harem were just servants who were bribed with money. Wu Jiaoyi was beating and scolding her, but she knew that the emperor would see and hear it. By then, even if the emperor didn't like her, he would still respect her because she was his woman. Seeing her being beaten and scolded like this, she would not beg for mercy. In the emperor's eyes, she would be more valued, but was it because she had schemed and thought that she was too smart, or, in the emperor's eyes, no matter how hard she tried, she was the same as those women? Wu Jiaoyi kneeled down emotionally. Thank you, Miss Shen. Eunuch Lu squinted his eyes and looked at the kneeling woman calmly. It was obvious that she wasn't as calm as before. Sure enough, as he looked at her, the woman in white finally raised her head and pretended to be calm. I have no grudge with Miss Shen. Why did Miss Shen instigate Wu Jiaoyi to kill me? Chapter 827. CI and Palace. The Empress Dowager, who always ordered people to observe Xin Yueji's every move, was stunned for a moment when she heard what happened between Xin Yueji and Wu Jiaoyi in the imperial garden. Then she pondered for a long time. Seeing that she was thinking so seriously, Nanny Zhu didn't dare to disturb her. Instead, she stayed by her side respectfully. When she was almost done thinking, Nanny Zhu frowned harder and harder, as if she couldn't figure it out. This was also her usual action and expression for many years. Empress Dowager, you can't figure out what Miss Shen did. Yes. Xian nodded. From the moment Shang-Er fell in love with her, I knew that this woman was different. Otherwise, Shang would not like her so much. However, her excellence is really beyond my expectation. I know that Wu Jiaoyi has bullied a lot of people in the harem. There were so many women in the harem that Nanny Zhu couldn't remember their names. There was only Wu Jiaoyi. Recently, Wu Jiaoyi had hurt people too frequently in the harem. No matter where she went, even in Ci and Palace, there were people secretly talking about her. So, Nanny Zhu was not surprised that she knew her name. First published on the Bai Chinese website. Calm. I also feel strange. Most of the women in the harem are kind and generous in order to perform well in front of His Majesty. Since Miss Shen met Wu Jiaoyi and bullied that woman, she should help that woman in front of His Majesty. In this way, she can also have a good reputation in the harem and let those women in the harem know her a little bit. Not only did she not do that, but it seemed that she didn't care that His Majesty was beside her. She still did what she wanted. She even helped Wu Jiaoyi and encouraged her to kill that woman. In this way, I'm afraid that rumors about her will spread in the harem again. People will say that she acted recklessly and lawlessly in the harem because of His Majesty's favor. She even treated people's lives as grass. Instead, she sided with evil people and hurt good people. Yes. Speaking up to this point, Xian suddenly laughed. The women in the harem are all scheming. That woman who gets beaten all the time might not be that kind. She took advantage of being bullied by Wu Jiaoyi all day long to show off her feelings. Others might not know, but I know what she's thinking. Could it be that Shen Yueji saw through something? Empress Dowager means that Miss Shen saw through that woman's ulterior motives. Other than that, I really don't understand why Shen Yueji would incite Wu Jiaoyi to take her life. She can't be as spoiled and disregarding human life as the rumors in the harem say, can she? If she was really such a vicious woman, according to the character of the white-haired granny, it was impossible for her to like her so much. The fastest network update mobile/m. The Empress Dowager has a discerning eye. Can't you see through a person's character with just a glance? Speaking of which, Empress Dowager, young Lady Shen has been in the palace for some time. Don't you want to see what this future rumored daughter-in-law is like? After listening to Nanny Zhu's words, Xian covered his mouth awkwardly and coughed. In fact, her future daughter-in-law, had secretly taken a peek the day she entered the palace. Fearing that Nanny Zhu would tease her, she didn't tell anyone about this matter. In the dead of night, without anyone knowing, she sneaked out of Ci and Palace. Using her meager martial arts skills, she went to the roof of Xingyang Palace and looked down. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, she followed Yudu literature. Chapter 828. Shen Yueji's every move, as well as her outstanding appearance, were naturally under her eyes. Fortunately, that old thing praised her future daughter-in-law to the skies. When she saw it, she was especially satisfied. Yes, her daughter-in-law was beautiful. Just the way she sat and behaved made people feel comfortable no matter how they looked at her. Therefore, after seeing her future daughter-in-law eagerly, Xian could bear it. If it weren't for the fact that they had met in advance, she was afraid that Shen Yueji wouldn't have taken the initiative to meet her, and she wouldn't have held back for so many days to not summon her. You're right. I've ignored her for some time, and it's time to meet her. Go to Xingyang Palace personally and pass the message that I want to see her. Yes, Empress Dowager. Granny Zhu smiled, bowed respectfully, and was about to leave. However, as soon as she turned around, she heard Xian hurriedly stop her from behind. Granny Zhu, do you think it's okay for me to meet her in this dress? Will it look very dignified? Will it scare her? Does Ji her like a kind mother-in-law or a dignified and easygoing one? She threw a few questions in a row. Granny Zhu found it funny, but she didn't dare to laugh out loud. She just said, Empress Dowager and Miss Shen will definitely hit it off at first sight, and they will have endless topics to talk about. Empress Dowager, don't worry. Miss Shen will definitely like you very much. Oh, when she comes later, what gift should I give her? I heard that she is quite favored in Feng country, and the whole Shen family spoils her so much. I guess she doesn't care about those silks and satins. Coincidentally, I don't like those things very much either. If I give her these things, it will seem too tacky, right? Thinking of this, Xian was in a dilemma. She hurriedly stood up from her seat and paced around. Seeing that Nanny Zhu was about to go out, she hurriedly stopped her. Don't rush to inform her. Come here and think about it with me first. When Ji comes later, what gift should I give her that she will like and not feel tacky? These days, that old thing has been showing her presence in front of Ji a lot. I think Ji likes her very much. This fake mother-in-law of hers has been hanging around her daughter-in-law more than me, the real mother-in-law. Tell me, what if Ji likes this fake mother-in-law and doesn't like me, the real mother-in-law? Originals, domain names, please remember Xian's tone was disappointed, and she began to feel deep regret. Alas, she sighed in her heart. If she had known this would happen, she would have gone to see Ji on the day she came over, instead of climbing on the roof to peek. Why did she have to show off her identity? What was more important than seeing her daughter-in-law? New by Chinese website. Calm. Calm this time, she let the old thing with white hair take advantage of the loophole. She was afraid that Ji now only had her as her mother-in-law in her heart, and didn't care about her anymore. Empress Dowager, you think too much. Through this servant's observation of Miss Shen these days, Miss Shen is not that kind of person. Empress Dowager, rest assured. The gift is light, but the sentiment is heavy. Miss Shen doesn't seem to be the kind of person who likes expensive gifts. This servant only needs to go to Xingyang Palace to call her. At that time, Empress Dowager will say a few words to her. I believe that at that time, Miss Shen will feel that she and Empress Dowager are like-minded, and may even surpass the white-hair granny. Really? Empress Dowager narrowed her eyes, showing that she didn't believe it, but what could she do? Who told her to call her daughter-in-law now? She waved her hand at Nanny Zhu. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat, chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 829. Okay, then you go to Xingyang Palace quickly. When Ji comes, you must inform Ai Jia in advance. Ai Jia will do well and prepare well. Yes, Empress Dowager. As soon as Shu Nanny turned around, she was surprised by a beautiful figure. The moment she saw Pang Yuan, she hurriedly bowed and saluted, imperial concubine. Pang Yuan's arrival not only surprised Shu Nanny, but also the Empress Dowager. Originally, she was worried about how she should behave when her daughter-in-law came. Now, hearing Shu Nanny salute, her eyes moved to Pang Yuan. Maybe she was disappointed by what Pang Yuan had done in private. Her expression was also indifferent, far from the enthusiasm she had when she saw Pang Yuan. When did Aijia's CI and palace become a place where you can enter whenever you want? You don't even need to inform me. Do you think that Aijia, an old woman, doesn't need to inform me? With a smile on her face, Pang Yuan ran towards her in a spoiled tone and naturally hugged her arm. Empress Dowager, what are you talking about? It's not that Wan didn't inform me, but when I came in, there was no one outside the CI and palace, not even a servant guarding the door. Wan didn't even see Zhu Nanny. Otherwise, how could Wan come in without notifying me? Wan was worried about you, Empress Dowager, so she trespassed. First, Domain, please remember she stuck out her tongue at her embarrassedly. Empress Dowager, you have doted on Wan since I was a child. You shouldn't be angry with Wan, right? Ci then snappily rolled her eyes. How dare Ai Jia be angry with you? Maybe you will remember it in your heart. Ai Jia's old bones can't bear your torment. Pang Yuan was not a fool. How could she not understand the meaning of her words? His complexion became unsightly, but he didn't dare to flare up. He continued to hold her arm and smiled fawningly. Empress Dowager, look at you. Wan knows she was wrong. Can you forgive Wan? Wan knows that she has done many wrong things, but the reason why Wan did this is because she likes Brother Emperor too much. Moreover, that woman from the Foam Kingdom has ulterior motives. She was originally the imperial consort of the Foam Kingdom's emperor. In the Foam Kingdom, she is very favored. The Foam Kingdom's emperor is also a young and handsome man. There is no need for her to give up on the Foam Kingdom's emperor and choose to marry to a place like the Northern Underworld. The reason why Wan did this was for Brimming's safety and Brother Emperor's sake. Wan didn't want to take her life originally. In the capital of Foam Country, I already punished her slightly and reminded her. Who knew that this woman would be so stupid? She didn't even know my kind reminder and still came to Brimming. Calm. Empress Dowager, seeing that Ci and was still ignoring her, Pang Yuan suppressed the impatience in her heart and kept shaking her arm. Empress Dowager is so biased towards that outsider. Do you know how sad Wan is? Up until now, Wan didn't do anything to her. Regarding this matter, father and mother-in-law have already heavily reprimanded and hit me. Wan also knows she was wrong. Empress Dowager has also given Wan the cold shoulder for so long. Empress Dowager, can you not stoop to Wan's level because Wan is young and insensible? After all, she had watched Pangshan grow up. In addition, she had also seen Pangshan's loyalty to her for so many years. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu Literature. Chapter 830. Xian sighed and touched her hair. Don't do it again. Do you understand? I know. Empress Dowager, don't you trust Wan? Wan has always listened to you since she was a child. You know that. Xian rolled his eyes at her and snorted. His tone was filled with endless affection and love for her. Is it because he listens to Ai Jia, or because Ai Jia is Shang's mother, so my words carry more weight with him? You little girl, you have been clever since you were a child. Do you really think that I will believe you? Empress Dowager. Pang Yuan looked at her embarrassedly. What are you talking about? Wan has always treated you as her own mother. Wan lost her mother when she was a child. Wan has always remembered the Empress Dowager's kindness to me and never dared to disobey her. Empress Dowager, Pang Yuan's tone became dejected. The words of not having a mother was like a thorn in Xian's heart. Firstly, she loved Wan since she was a child. Secondly, if it were not for her mother, she would have been the one who died. She had always owed her mother her life. Furthermore, she had caused Pangshan to lose the woman he loved at such a young age. She felt even more guilty towards Wan. All these years, she could only treat Wan as her own daughter. She cared for her and loved her even more. It seemed that this was the only way she could repay Pangshan and his late wife for their efforts and kindness towards her. She even secretly cooperated with the dark poison cult to deal with Shen Yueji. If it were not for the fact that the white-haired old woman was highly skilled in martial arts, she might even have died in her hands. When she found out about this, she was really angry. She was so angry that she wanted to punish Wan on the spot. The white-haired old woman was like her own mother in her heart. How could she let her go if something bad happened to the white-haired old woman? But for her mother's sake, she kept her mouth shut about this matter. Even when her father came to the palace today and tried to get information out of her mouth, for her sake, she didn't tell him. She only said it was a small quarrel between children and didn't let Pang Shen get involved. Pang Shen saw that he couldn't get anything out of her. Perhaps he felt that there was no need for her to lie to him. After all, in his eyes, Pang Yuan was just spoiled rotten, but she was kind and had a conscience. Xian sighed. He really didn't know what to do. He understood Pang Yuan's thoughts. It was not just what Pang Shen thought. He felt that he treated his daughter as his own daughter, so he lacked a lot in teaching her. He only wanted to serve Dark North wholeheartedly. New by Chinese website. If Pang Yuan was really kind-hearted, how could a vicious sect like the Dark Poison Cult listen to her? Through the incident with Shen Yueji, Xian discovered that Pang Yuan's temperament was one that would not listen to advice at all. She would hate whoever tried to persuade her. New by Chinese website. Calm. Even she was no exception. Although she respected Lin Mingya because she was Shang Er's mother, everyone knew that behind this respect, Lin Mingya was afraid that Lin Mingya already hated Lin Mingya and did not want to see Lin Mingya anymore. Lin Mingya didn't say it out loud. She was not a fool. She was a person with one foot in the grave. When it came to some things and behaviors, she thought that she knew more than this little girl. Empress Dowager, Granny Zhu stood on the side and felt a little embarrassed. At this time, she didn't know whether she should go to Xingyang Palace and ask Shen Yueji to come over. To talk about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, WeChat followed, you read literature. Talk about life and find bosom friends. Chapter 831. After all, concubine Pang and Shen Yueji had conflicts. If the two of them were to bump into each other, Empress Dowager, when I just came in, I vaguely heard you talking to Mammy Zhu. You asked Mammy Zhu to send a message to Xingyang Palace. Do you want to see Shen Yueji? Pang Yuan's seemingly ignorant question, in fact, the two of them understood the underlying meaning behind her words. This girl must have heard most of the conversation between her and Nanny Zhu in Ci and Palace. Otherwise, she would not have questioned them in such a tone. Xian knew that since she had heard it, she couldn't tell Nanny Zhu not to allow Shen Yueji to come, because it was obvious that she was deliberately targeting her. She teased, not knowing what to say for a moment. After all, she had watched Pang Yuan grow up. She was more or less clear about Pang Yuan's character. However, Shen Yueji was different. She could only understand her from other people's mouths. As for her personality and the way she handled things, including how Pang Yuan had schemed against her 2 days ago and tried to take her life, one was Wan whom he had watched grow up and treated like his own daughter. The other was his future daughter-in-law. Huaxin Originals, domain names. Please remember, Empress Dowager, do you still remember the matter of Wan ordering people to kill her? Didn't Wan say it? Wan doesn't want to do this. After all, Wan has no grudges with her. However, she is from the Feng Nation and a royal consort of the Feng Nation. The Feng Nation's emperor loves her so much, yet she still took the risk to come here. Wan do you think that the emperor isn't outstanding enough? That's why Shen Yueji should choose the emperor of Feng country and not Shang www.com. No, Empress Dowager Wan didn't mean that. Wan doesn't mean that. Pang Yuan never thought that this old woman would react so quickly and follow up on her words so quickly. She hurriedly waved her hands. Empress Dowager, everyone knows how outstanding Brother Emperor is. Wan is no exception. In Wan eyes, Brother Emperor is the most outstanding man in the world. No one can be compared to him. Wan means. She took Xian's hand and shook it. Wan is suspecting that Shen Yueji has ulterior motives. Wan has already explained it to the Empress Dowager. Otherwise, why would Wan go through so much trouble to take her life? Isn't her goal the Emperor brother? Now, she has come to Biming's harem. Brother Emperor likes her so much that even Empress Dowager and the white-haired granny have acknowledged her. Regarding this, Wan has nothing to say. As long as she treats Brother Emperor sincerely and respects Empress Dowager sincerely, just like Wan will be content. Wan is also willing to call her sister in the future. No matter what she did or said before, at least Xian was quite satisfied with what she said. She patted the back of Pang Yuan's hand and said, "It's good that you can think this way. I really wanted you to be my daughter-in-law before. After all, I watched you grow up. I know your character and temperament. But fate makes fools of people. I like you, but it doesn't mean that Shang likes you. If he..." Empress Dowager. Pang Yuan's voice was filled with resentment. Even the hand that was shaking Jian's arm hardened. "Empress Dowager, what are you talking about? Of course Brother Emperor likes Wan If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yuda Literature. Chapter 832. It's just that the women outside dazzle my brother. One day, my brother will know who treats him sincerely and loves him sincerely. Xian subconsciously exchanged a look with Nanny Zhu. Nanny Zhu quickly bowed. "Yes, Empress Dowager. I will go to Xingyang Palace as soon as possible and ask Miss Shen to pay her respects to you." She watched Nanny Zhu go out. Pang Yuan's eyes turned quickly, and then she couldn't help grasping the back of Xian's hand. She seemed to ask intentionally or unintentionally, "Empress Dowager, from what Nanny Zhu said, it seems that Shen Yueji hasn't taken the initiative to pay her respects to you." Xian's hand was a little painful because of her grip, but she didn't take the initiative to remind her. Instead, she said, "Yes, she hasn't taken the initiative to pay her respects to me. Then this woman is too much. She doesn't know what's good for her." Pang Yuan stood up angrily and looked at Xian. "Empress Dowager, you are also the Empress Dowager of a country. Who does Shen Yueji think she is? She is just a woman from Feng country. My brother hasn't conferred her the title of Empress yet, but she dares to be so arrogant. If my brother conferred her the title of Empress, wouldn't she be even more proud? Wouldn't she look down on you? Empress Dowager." Pang Yuan was also a person who knew how to speak according to others' mood. She saw that Xian didn't say anything, so she obediently squatted down in front of her and looked indignant. "Empress Dowager, do you know that after knowing that she came to Biming, and after being reprimanded by the white-haired granny last night, Wan deeply knew that she had done something wrong. So, the next day, Wan ran to Shen Yueji to apologize. Empress Dowager, you know that Wan has been spoiled by father and you since she was a child. Even if she did something wrong, she would never admit it. She would only act like a spoiled child in front of you. Empress Dowager and father have always doted on Wan and were never willing to scold Wan But for my brother, Wan took the initiative to marry Shen Yueji. Especially after knowing that Empress Dowager was very satisfied with her, Wan didn't want my brother and Empress Dowager to be embarrassed. Wan planned to take the initiative to apologize to Shen Yueji. In the future, in this harem, she would be a companion and we could get along well. Who knew? Speaking of this, she actually cried in a low voice and pouted, but who knew that Xinyueji? It was hard for her to say the rest of her words. Xiao, who was behind her, understood and hurriedly knelt on the ground. Empress Dowager, I saw her ladyship's embarrassment and goodwill. Xinyueji doesn't know what's good for her. Even a person of her ladyship's status took the initiative to apologize to her. Who knew that Xinyueji not only didn't accept her ladyship's apology, but also spoke ill of her ladyship? Not only that, she also made things difficult for her ladyship. Even, what else? He also said that when he sees Grand Tutor Pang one day, he will tell Grand Tutor Pang and the people of the capital about the matter of your highness secretly colluding with Poison Yuji cult. He will completely destroy the reputation of imperial consort Nyang. She didn't say it today because she's not familiar with the matters of the northern underworld. Even if she said it, she wouldn't be able to convince anyone. So. Xiao Er's face was filled with indignation. When she mentioned Pang Yuan, her face was filled with righteous indignation, as if Pang Yuan had suffered a great deal in her hands. She was so angry that she couldn't even speak clearly. The rest of the words, Pang Yuan didn't wait for her to finish and reprimanded her sternly. Who allowed you to say this? Baiduan read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Provoking Body Claw Bookhouse, for free. Chapter 833. The words of reprimand were just right. Speaking of this, Pang Yuan was quite clever. However, these behaviors and little cleverness might be seen by others, but she, Xian, was experienced. She could see through Pang Yuan's behavior at a glance. She narrowed her eyes. There was no anger or annoyance in her tone. It was just a very normal tone. Okay. There is a misunderstanding between Wan, and Xinyueji. Why don't you think about it yourself? If you didn't take the initiative to find trouble with her, she wouldn't have to threaten you like this. As she said, she glanced at Xiao, who was afraid that the matter was not big enough and was still making trouble. What kind of servants are you raising? Their master did something wrong, but they don't know how to comfort their master. Instead, they know how to add oil and vinegar and confuse black and white. She's not some saint. You've already taken her life, so why should she treat you differently just because of a misunderstanding and an apology? Pang Yuan looked embarrassed. Because the Empress Dowager was pointing at the mulberry tree and scolding the locust tree, she didn't dare to say anything. Even Xiao didn't expect that the Empress Dowager would blame her. Anyway, she was just a servant. How could she be so bold? Even if she was the favorite of the imperial concubine, she didn't dare. As servants, they all had a deep understanding of the imperial concubine's character. How could they dare to be disrespectful to the imperial concubine? If their words made the imperial consort dissatisfied, they might not even be able to keep their lives. This time, Xiao really couldn't say anything. Fortunately, the Empress Dowager just scolded her and didn't do anything to her. Compared with the imperial concubine, the Empress Dowager treated her much better. Her eyes turned red and she knelt on the ground. Yes, Empress Dowager, I was wrong. I will persuade you in the future. Mobile/M. Calm/reflect on yourself. Pang Yuan was even more angry at this moment. After all, Xiao was just her servant. In this harem, who didn't know her character? Why did she need a servant to tell her what to do when she wanted to do it herself? She was so angry that her little face couldn't be twisted. New August Chinese Neto. Calm. Calm from this position, Xian could clearly see her little face contorted in anger. He sighed and shook his head. This last seemed to be more vicious than he had imagined. She really didn't expect that her mother, who was so gentle and kind when she was alive, would become so malicious and scheming when it came to her? Who exactly did she resemble with her vicious temper? If it was someone like Grand Tutor Pang, he was a god of war on the battlefield and was full of righteousness. How could he have such deep schemes and vicious thoughts? The Pang family only had one daughter, and the fault of the children was mostly on their parents. Er's mother passed away early, so her father's discipline towards her was naturally not as meticulous as her mother's. Could it be her? Was it her pampering and indulging of her that caused her to develop such a personality? She did it for the sake of the Pang family's sacrifice for her, including those women in the harem. If they didn't take the initiative to find trouble with her and pretend to be good to her, they were actually using her to inquire about the emperor and used the purpose of seeing the emperor as an excuse. She also believed that Er wouldn't take the initiative to find trouble with them. After all, there were so many women in the harem. She also believed that she didn't have so much time to find trouble with them one by one. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat followed. You read literature. Chat about life and find a bosom friend. Chapter 834. Xian shook her head with a headache. She treated as her own daughter, and even more so for her benefactor. She didn't expect that would become like this. Now, she had her own thoughts, her own ideas. She couldn't teach her anymore. She could almost foresee what would happen to Pang Yuan in the future. Although didn't tell her that had colluded with the dark poisonous cult to assassinate Shen Yueji, she knew that this matter couldn't be forgotten. Er's character was very similar to her man's. Once he decided on something, even 10 oxen couldn't pull him back. Especially when dared to hurt the woman he loved. That was definitely the deepest thorn in his heart. If it wasn't removed, it would always be on his mind. He always wanted to get rid of it. Thinking of this, she got up and went to the inner hall without a word. Pang Yuan saw her get up and hurried over to help her. Empress Dowager, where are you going? Will help you. Xian waved his hand at her. I'm not that old yet. Wait for me outside. I'll be out in a while. www.com. Hearing this, Pang Yuan didn't dare to refute. She could only let go of her hand and watch her go in. When she was completely in the inner hall, her figure disappeared. Pang Yuan suddenly kicked Xiao hard. Xiao was still kneeling. This angle made it easy for Pang Yuan to kick her chest. Xiao was kicked to the ground almost immediately. She was in so much pain that she couldn't breathe for a long time. She couldn't even speak for a long time. The moment she was kicked down by Pang Yuan, she saw her kneeling on the ground. Although she couldn't open her mouth or speak, she still tried hard to kowtow to Pang Yuan, begging for her forgiveness. She really didn't mean it. She thought that if she said this, the Empress Dowager would feel sorry for Imperial Concubine. After all, the Empress Dowager had watched Imperial Concubine grow up. In the harem, no matter what Imperial Concubine did, even if she did something wrong, the Empress Dowager would not punish her. If the Empress Dowager knew that Imperial Concubine had been mocked and threatened by Shen Yueji because of her initiative to please Shen Yueji, Xiao had thought that the Empress Dowager would feel sorry for Imperial Concubine and would avenge her. If the Empress Dowager didn't intend to avenge Imperial Concubine because Imperial Concubine was insulted and threatened by Shen Yueji. This way, the Empress would remember her contributions and all the mistakes she had made before would be cancelled out in the Empress' heart. Her future days would also be better. But she had never thought that the Empress Dowager's answer would be completely out of her expectations. This kind of indirect scolding, wasn't it referring to her Empress? When the Empress Dowager scolded her, Xiao knew that she would be blamed. Xiao knew. Xiao knew that. Imperial concubine was. Xiao. Xiao, cried. After a while, she was finally able to breathe and speak normally. Her voice was still a little hoarse. Maybe it was because Pang Yuan's kick was not light. She kowtowed to Pang Yuan in embarrassment. Your Highness, I'm sorry. Your Highness, I don't know how things turned out like this. I thought that according to the Empress Dowager's love for you, she would definitely avenge you. Even if the Empress Dowager took into account the Emperor, she would definitely ignore Shen Yueji for a period of time. After all, in the Empress Dowager's heart, Imperial concubine is the most important. But the website was updated the fastest. On the computer, I want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble. Talk about life and find bosom friends. Chapter 835. Blood was about to spurt out in front of Pang Yuan. Pang Yuan swallowed the blood because of the woman's cold and threatening eyes. As a result of swallowing the blood too fast, she suddenly coughed heavily. She didn't catch her breath for a long time. Pang Yuan stared at her dangerously. This is the Empress Dowager's CI and palace. Remember, it's not my pure yang palace. You'd better keep your voice down. If the Empress Dowager hears it, I'll kill you when we go back. Xiao was so frightened that her whole body trembled, and she did not dare to cough loudly anymore. Even when the feeling of coughing came, she also trembled fiercely and swallowed it with all her might. Even when her face turned red in the end, she did not dare to make the slightest sound of coughing. Her face was red, and her eyes were red and swollen. Your Highness, I'm sorry. I messed up things again. What should I do now? And it seemed that the Empress Dowager just reprimanded her a few words and didn't. Fortunately, the Empress Dowager just said a few words. If she really found trouble with Pang Yuan, maybe she would have been a corpse now. How could she live until now? What should I do? I have to ask you about this. Pang Yuan snorted coldly. If it weren't for the consideration that this was CI and palace, if she did anything to this little bitch, she would be found out when the Empress Dowager came out. She also endured it. How uncomfortable it was for her to hold it back. Not long after, she saw CI and coming out from inside. She seemed to give Pang Yuan enough time. Pang Yuan didn't know if it was an illusion, but she always felt that the Empress Dowager came out at the right time, giving her enough time to vent. When she finished venting, she came out. The moment she saw CI and coming out from inside, Pang Yuan hurriedly stood up properly. When she went in, there was no blood at the corner of Xiao mouth. When she came out, not to mention that her clothes were in a mess, even the bright red blood at the corner of her mouth was not wiped clean. It could be imagined how cruelly Pang Yuan treated her maidservant during the time she went in. Cian's eyes flashed, and something flashed through her eyes quickly. Thinking of Wan, now, she also felt sorry. In fact, Wan could have been better and could have been taught better. She didn't have to be like this at all. If she had known that blindly indulging and pampering her would turn her into this, she would have taught her a lesson from the start. She would have personally brought her to her side and watched over her wherever she went. She would have taught her how to treat others kindly. That way, she wouldn't have turned out to be so vicious and frightening, whether it was shrewdness or thoughts. To be honest, in Cian's heart, she was indeed quite afraid of her. She was afraid that she would mess around again, afraid that she would play tricks behind her back, afraid that she would do something again. At that time, Shang would not spare her, and even she would not be able to save her. She was afraid that if things really came to that point, not only would she let down her dead mother, the Pang family had sacrificed so much for her Dark North Empire, but she would not be able to repay them at all. CIN from her to her. Ping. She thought. To she of. One has been waiting for a long time. One her is about to get sleepy. Baidwan read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine. The Prince Regent gets into trouble with Claw Book House, free of charge. Chapter 836. Listening to her joking tone, Xian smiled and said, "You can't wait anymore after such a short time. If Shang comes, won't you be tired even if you wait for 3 days and 3 nights? Hearing her joke, Peng Yuan blushed. "Empress Dowager, look at you. You are teasing me again." Thinking that she had just been in there for so long, Peng Yuan leaned towards her with a mysterious face. "Empress Dowager, you have been in there for so long. What did you do?" At first, she thought that Xian went in to change clothes. Although Nanny Zhu was not around, Xian sometimes changed clothes by himself. However, Peng Yuan saw that she was wearing the same clothes before she went in, and now that she came out, she was still wearing the same clothes. There was no difference. Peng Yuan knew that she didn't go in to change her clothes. Xian glanced at her and sat in his seat. Then he squinted at her and pretended to reprimand. "How can you be so rude? Stand properly, I have something to give you." Hearing that the Empress Dowager had something for her, Peng Yuan's small face smiled until it was almost a line. She looked at her curiously. "Empress Dowager, what do you want to give to Wan, Here, take a look for yourself." Peng Yuan was curious at first, but when she saw what Xian handed to her, she really couldn't smile anymore. She just stared at Xian's palm, where a golden death exemption medallion was lying calmly in her palm. She didn't know why, but all kinds of emotions flashed through her heart. Why does the Empress Dowager give this to Wan? Everyone knew the exemption card. She couldn't understand why the Empress Dowager gave it to her. Historically, the exemption card was only given to those ministers with outstanding military exploits. Even her father didn't have it. She was just an imperial concubine in the harem. To be honest, she didn't make much contribution to Dark North. She felt that she didn't need these things at all. Why did the Empress Dowager give her the exemption card? "Wan, I asked you to take it. Just take it." Hearing the Empress Dowager's words, Peng Yuan didn't dare to hesitate anymore and carefully took the exemption card from her hand. Xian narrowed his eyes and stared at her little face, which was quite similar to that woman's, for a while. Just this face alone, although it was different from that woman's temperament, perhaps the reason why Pang Xin had indulged and doted on her so many times was because she was too similar to her mother. There was a saying, seeing things reminds one of the person. When they saw Peng Yuan, they would think of that woman who had passed away, so it was inevitable that they would be touched. The fastest network update on the computer, first published on the new August 1st Chinese website. Peng Yuan was Pang Xin's daughter, so it was only natural for him to dote on her. The reason why she doted on her was because she and her mother had similar appearances. "I only have one of these death exemption medallions. When the late emperor passed away, he left it for me. He asked me to use it on those officials who were useful to me. You also know that when the late emperor passed away, the rebels in the court were eyeing the throne covetously. There were many loyal officials who followed the late emperor to conquer the country, and your father was one of them. The late emperor was worried that those rebels would conspire to frame the loyal officials, so this exemption card was used on those loyal officials, so they could be spared once." Then the Empress Dowager. She wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, regent, get into trouble. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 837. Peng Yuan couldn't understand. Then why did Empress Dowager give this death exemption token to Wan-er? Wan-er is just a woman in my brother's harem. She doesn't need this death exemption token at all. If they really need it, only those ministers in the court need it. Wan-er is simply. Even if those ministers didn't need it, it would be good to give it to her father. Why did she give it to her, Wan-er, don't you understand? Empress Dowager, when your mother was alive, she was gentle, kind, and magnanimous, but you were the complete opposite of her. You were spoiled by your father and I, and became lawless and condescending. You put yourself first in everything. Speaking of this, it's all my fault. After all, Pang Shen is a man. He worked for Dark North on the battlefield and entrusted you to me. But for your mother's sake, I have always indulged you and treated you well. I thought I loved you and cherished you. But I forgot to tell you that you are always demanding. Relying on your identity, you are lawless in this harem and do whatever you want. If you can't get what you want, you will use abnormal means to kill people and treat anyone you don't like cruelly. This is the real harm to you. www.com. Calm now, you are an adult and have your own thoughts and ideas. I know that no matter what I say, it will be no different. Maybe in your heart, you will be jealous and angry with me. Speaking up to this point, Xian shook his head. Wan-er, speaking of which, it is all my fault that you have made such a mistake today. If I had properly taught you from a young age, taught you how to be a person, you wouldn't have relied on your status to do whatever you wanted in this harem and be lawless. Perhaps, by now, your mind is as pure as a piece of white paper. In this harem, I can still protect you. What schemes, what deceit, as long as I am here, as long as I am alive, you will be safe. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't moved. Pang Yuan looked at her with red eyes. Empress Dowager, do you think I have become cruel and vicious? Xian sighed but didn't say anything. It was precisely because she did not say anything that it confirmed to Pang Yuan that everything she said was blaming her. She felt that Pang Yuan was being unreasonable, that she, and this death exemption gold medal, Pang Yuan couldn't help clenching the death exemption gold medal in her hand. She was neither excited nor happy. From the moment she took out the death exemption medallion, from the moment she gave it to her, she was not happy at all. She could not be happy at all. Because she knew that the Empress Dowager was disappointed in her. She thought that sooner or later, the Empress Dowager would give up protecting her and protect her. Therefore, the Empress Dowager gave the golden medallion to her, hoping that when the Empress Dowager could not even protect them, the Empress Dowager would save her life for the sake of the golden medallion. Pang Yuan suddenly laughed coldly. Looking at Xian, she suddenly raised her hand and smashed the death exemption medallion in front of Xian. Xian's eyes flashed with sharpness. In the harem, she was the most powerful woman. Not to mention an imperial concubine, even if there was an empress in the future, none of the women in the harem dared to be so presumptuous in front of her. But this Pang Yuan had long been arrogant and looked down on her. She wanted to get angry, but Xian forced herself to hold back. Speaking of which, if she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble. Talk about life and find bosom friends. Chapter 838. It was all her fault that Wan became like this. She was sorry to her mother and Wan. She didn't want to be more sorry to her. Thinking of the sad past, Xian closed her eyes. Her eyes were slightly red, but she didn't want Pang Yuan to see it. In fact, her life was not so smooth. The man who loved her was the emperor of a country. He carried the responsibilities and burdens of a country. Just for her, she did not know how much effort he had put in behind the scenes. Even the quarrels between the court officials and the common people had never stopped. He was busy every day, but he still could not bear to let her know of his difficulties. He only gave her a smile, a gentle smile, and carried all the burdens on her shoulders, carrying them alone. And her friends. In her life, there were very few friends worth making. Most of them were friends with her for their own selfish desires. Only her mother, so whether it was Juan or Shang, she was willing to listen to Shang. What he wanted to do and what he liked, she would try her best to accept and abide by his preferences. Because she had experienced that it was really not easy for a man in a royal family to like a woman. On the contrary, it was really difficult. She didn't want her only son to really put his life on the throne and live only for the world, not for himself. And Pang Yuan didn't feel that she had done anything wrong, even if she despised the Empress Dowager. Xiao who was kneeling on the ground, was scared. In the past, she only thought that the Empress Dowager was cruel, but now she didn't think so. She was clearly reckless. How could she despise the Empress Dowager like this? Did she know what she was doing? How dare she smash something in front of the Empress Dowager? She was so presumptuous. Even as an outsider, she knew that the Empress Dowager did it out of kindness. But she didn't know that she was so rude to the Empress Dowager. Have you vented enough? Xian silently watched her vent her anger on him, especially the death exemption medallion. If he hadn't reacted quickly and moved his head aside in time, he was afraid that the stone-hard object would have smashed a hole in his head. First, Domain, please remember, Empress Dowager, do you also think that Wan is cruel and merciless, killing people like flies? She's not fit to be the imperial concubine of the Dark North Kingdom. Pang Yuan smiled coldly. All these years, I've done it for Brother Emperor without any complaints or regrets. All I wanted was to gain Brother Emperor's favor. But Empress Dowager, do you know what I've gotten in return? Since I entered the palace, I don't know how many ways I have thought of, just to be able to attract the attention of the Emperor. Here, I have no friends, only myself. All day long, I shut myself in the huge Pyongyang palace. Those women who approach me have another purpose. They're just trying to get close to me. That way, they can get the Emperor's attention. Mobile/M. What a joke. What's funny is how should I tell them? Do I have to tell them that Brother Emperor has never interacted with me in private? Not to mention them, even for me, it's more difficult than ascending to the heavens to see Brother Emperor. Empress Dowager, you're also a woman. When you followed the late Emperor loved you so much. You must not know the taste of being ignored and abandoned. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat, talk about life, find a confidant. Chapter 839. I just don't understand. I, Pang Yuan, have the looks and the status, and I love him more than that woman. I've loved him for so many years without any regrets. Why? Why does my brother, the Emperor, like her and not me? Empress Dowager, Wan feels bad, Wan feels bad. Wan always thought that the Empress Dowager was the one who understood Wan the most, but even you are now siding with that woman. Wan really didn't know what she did wrong. Was it wrong from the moment she entered the palace, or was it wrong from the moment she fell in love with my brother, the Emperor? But is it wrong to love someone? Why don't you like me? Why do you all teach me a lesson? Or did that woman give you something good to make you all think she's better than me, better than me? Why don't you all calm down and think about her goal? Why did she get close to my brother, and what was her goal? Why do you only see my bad side and only know how to make trouble for me, but not? Perhaps she really felt wronged. Pang Yuan hugged herself sadly, squatting down and quietly sobbing. She really didn't know what she did wrong. If it was as she said, that it was wrong to love someone, then wasn't it wrong for everyone in the world to love someone? She didn't think it was wrong for her to love her brother, the emperor. From the first time she saw her brother, she fell deeply in love with him. She didn't ask for anything, she just wanted to be with her brother, for the rest of her life. Even if he wasn't the emperor, as long as he was willing to look at her, she would be so happy that she wouldn't be able to sleep for 2 days and 2 nights. Xian didn't speak again because she knew there was no need to. Peng Yuan was already an adult. Whether it was her actions or her methods, she was now an adult with her own thoughts. If she was still young, she could still teach her, but now that she was an adult, she could no longer teach her. Peng Yuan saw that she didn't speak and thought she was blocked by her words. She still didn't think she was wrong. She walked to Xian and held her hand, still speaking in a coquettish tone, "Empress Dowager, you can't be so biased. You watched Wan Er grow up. Who does Shin Yueji think she is? Are you just going to watch my brother be bewitched by that evil woman? What benefits can she give you? She's a spy sent by the Feng Kingdom, and her relationship with the Feng Kingdom's emperor is unclear. Putting aside the fact that she's two-timing, who knows what her intentions are? No matter how attentive she is still the woman Shang has taken a liking to. I only have this one son. It's rare that he's enlightened about women. Do you want me to break up their relationship? Empress Dowager. I gave you the death exemption medallion out of kindness. If Wan Er doesn't appreciate it, then pick it up and give it back to me. You must remember that this death exemption medallion was given to you by me, not for you to use on me. You are also an imperial concubine of a country, so where have you learned such manners? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at if others see it? Peng Yuan also knew that she had gone too far just now, giving the Empress Dowager the right to scold her. She pouted and didn't dare to refute for herself. Xiao Er was also smart. Seeing that the Empress Dowager was vaguely angry, she quickly crawled over. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Regent, Messing with Claw Bookhouse, for free. Chapter 840. He picked up the death exemption medallion and handed it to Peng Yuan respectfully. Your Highness, this is the Empress Dowager's kindness. She only bestowed this death exemption medallion to you because she dotes on you too much. Think about it. She carefully leaned close to Peng Yuan's ear and whispered, with this death exemption medallion, no matter what your Highness does in the future, you will be able to avoid death. This means that the Empress Dowager sincerely favors your Highness. Otherwise, why would she bestow this death exemption medallion to you? Even that woman from Feng Nation, no matter how much the Empress Dowager said she liked her, she didn't give this honor to her. On the computer, Peng Yuan felt that Xiaoer's words were reasonable. Looking at Xiaoer's face, Peng Yuan suddenly felt that she was more pleasing to the eye. She took the immortal gold medallion from her hands. Huaxin Originals, domain names, please remember. Peng Yuan glanced at it. She seemed to have thought of something and suddenly laughed. She walked up to Xian with a fawning face and carefully held her arm. No matter what the Empress Dowager says, Wan will be obedient. Just now, Wan was too impulsive. Empress Dowager, please forgive Wan and don't mind Wan Er's mistake, okay? Knowing her character, the Empress Dowager was too lazy to argue with her. When comes, don't use your identity as a Guifei to pressure her, understand? I know, Empress Dowager. She hasn't come yet, but you're already afraid that I'll do something to her. She's already in our Biming's harem. No matter how much Wan doesn't like her, she won't dare to do anything to her. Now, not only did she have the Empress Dowager and the others to protect her, even her older brother the Emperor liked her so much. If she really dared to hurt her, her older brother the Emperor would be the first to object. She recalled that the Empress Dowager had just given her the immunity medallion. Pang Yuan's lips curled into a scheming smile. Jingyang Palace. After returning from the Imperial Garden, Shin Yueji had the rare leisure to play chess with a man. However, halfway through the game, she saw someone outside. She had never met Nanny Zhu, but she had heard Double Happiness mention her. On the first day of Double Happiness's arrival in the northern underworld, he had investigated all the important people in the harem. Naturally, Granny Zhu was one of them. After Zhu Momo came in, she respectfully paid her respects to the emperor and bowed to her. "Young Lady Shin, Empress Dowager invites you." There was not the slightest surprise on her face, not even the slightest bit of flattery. Shin Yueji seemed to have known that the Empress Dowager would summon her, so all this was within her expectations. She glanced at the man beside her. However, the man frowned in displeasure. "Emperor, the Empress Dowager does not know that you are currently playing chess with young Lady Qin. If she knew, the Empress Dowager would definitely not let this servant disturb the Emperor and young Lady Chen's elegance." Granny Zhu smiled and explained. Shin Yueji put down the chess piece in her hand with a faint smile. "It's just a game of chess to kill time. You can play chess at any time. Since the Empress Dowager invites me, allow me to change my clothes first, then follow Granny Zhu to Ci and Palace to visit the Empress Dowager." Speaking up to this point, she paused for a moment, then smiled and apologized on her own. "Speaking of this, it's also my fault. Logically speaking, I should have visited the Empress Dowager on the first day I arrived, but I dragged it on until now. I hope the Empress Dowager will not be angry with me." Granny Zhu smiled. "Young Lady Shin is too serious." The white-haired Granny and the Empress Dowager have always been close, and the Empress Dowager has long known about young Lady Shin's character. She also likes young Lady Shin from the bottom of her heart. She can't wait to like young Lady Shin, so why would she be angry with young Lady Shin? If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 841. He watched Shin Yueji enter the hall to change her clothes. Mo Wushang stayed there alone for a while, then got up and went in. The fastest update on the net. Mobile phone /m. Com /Your Majesty. Nanny Zhu hurriedly called out to him when she saw him entering the hall. The emperor was even more displeased. He looked back and his eyes were as cold as a blade. Nanny Zhu inexplicably felt guilty. She could only find a topic to attract the emperor's attention instead of his cold eyes. "Your Majesty, Imperial concubine is also in Ci and Palace. Since your Majesty is not in the Imperial study today, why don't you go to Ci and Palace with Miss Shin later? Imperial concubine has been spoiled since she was young. Sometimes when she gets angry, she doesn't even care about the Empress Dowager's words. But your Majesty is different. She has always listened to you. With you following her, I believe that Imperial concubine won't dare to make trouble for Miss Shin." Sure enough, after her considerate words for Shin Yueji's sake, the emperor's expression became better. His cold expression softened a little. "Don't worry, I will follow her." In the inner hall, Shuangshi helped her change her clothes. She didn't know how many times she had exclaimed in admiration. "Miss, did you expect that the Empress Dowager would not be able to resist summoning you?" Shin Yueji simply applied a little powder on her face. Hearing this, he replied softly, "Yes, I expected it. I found that Miss is really getting smarter. I was worried that Miss would forget about the Empress Dowager in the northern underworld. Until now, you haven't taken the initiative to mention her. Not to mention visiting her, you didn't even mention her to me." "What?" Shin Yueji couldn't help but look at her with a funny smile. Do you really think that I am arrogant because of the Empress Dowager's favor, just like those people outside think? Hearing this, Shuangshi hurriedly waved her hand. No, 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 miss, I don't think that. I don't mean that. Please don't look at me like that. www. Calm. Calm, I just think it's strange that you didn't go to visit the Empress Dowager. Although I know you must have your own reasons for doing so, but, she wanted to say something more, but when she saw Mo Wushang enter, she quickly stopped talking and made way for the man, so that it would be convenient for him to freshen up her young miss. Mo Wushang took the comb from her hands and gently combed Shin Yueji's hair. Looking at the beautiful girl in the mirror, the corners of the man's mouth rose slightly. His tone was not as sharp as when he spoke to outsiders. If you don't want to go, then don't go. I'm here. Just stay in this palace and do whatever you want. That won't do. The Empress Dowager is your biological mother. If I marry you, she will be my mother in the future. As a junior, filial piety to the elders is a matter of course. You only need to love me in the future. You don't need to care about her. He hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her head. Shall I go with you? Are you so worried about your mother? Shin Yueji looked at him through the bronze mirror. You've been with me for so long. You'd better go to the imperial study to deal with your affairs in the court. Besides, the Empress Dowager is not an unreasonable person. I heard from Granny that the Empress Dowager seems to be a good person. And she likes me. Through the 2 days she had been in the Northern Underworld, she had more or less figured out the Empress Dowager of the Northern Underworld. She was not like the Empress Dowager of an ordinary country, who had the airs of an Empress Dowager. In comparison, the Empress Dowager of the Northern Underworld was not only amiable, but also fair in rewards and punishments. She only protected the people she liked very much, such as Pang Yuan, and also, her. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about, explosively cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat followed, you read literature. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 842. Pang Yuan is in Xi'an Palace. I'm worried about her. Shall I go with you? Her. Shin Yueji drawled, are you worried about her or me? She turned around and looked at the man behind her. If you're really worried about me, you should be worried about me. What if she dares to face me in front of the Empress Dowager? Do you think I'll be at a disadvantage according to my character? The man lovingly scratched her pretty nose. Of course not. Isn't that all? Shin Yueji rolled her eyes. I've already said that if Brimming doesn't satisfy me, I'll leave. I don't care if she's an imperial concubine or not. If she dares to provoke me, I'll pay her back 10 times. Good girl, pay her back 100 times. I'll take care of everything. Even if you kill her, I'll take responsibility for it. These words made Shin Yueji feel more confident. She hugged the man and kissed him hard. The man enjoyed it very much. If he had known that saying such words could make her so happy, he should have understood this truth earlier and said more in the future. Eat something first. You haven't eaten yet. Let's go after your foal. Shin Yueji covered her hungry stomach. Will it make the Empress Dowager wait for a long time? Mo Wushang glanced at her with doting eyes. Who cares about her? At most, I'll wait for a while. I can't let my woman starve. Hearing this, Shin Yueji looked at him with a smile and said coquettishly, look at you. How old are you? Why are you still so childish? Mo Wushang held her hand in his palm. Lu Yu. I'm here. Set the table. Yes. Double Happiness saw that the two of them really ate as if there was no one else, even ignoring the Empress Dowager. Double Happiness felt a headache and held her forehead. Wasn't it too obvious? It was easy for the people in the harem to gossip. She saw that Nanny Zhu was still waiting respectfully outside. She walked out. Seeing her coming out, Nanny Zhu was also in a good mood. "Miss Shuangshi, is your miss well?" Shuangshi scratched her head awkwardly. Knowing that Nanny Zhu was the favorite of the Empress Dowager, she did not dare to be too presumptuous. Instead, she said, "Nanny Zhu. My miss hasn't eaten since she came back from the Imperial Garden. The Emperor is worried that she will be hungry, so he plans to accompany her to eat first and then go to see the Empress Dowager." Mobile/M. While saying this, she had been carefully observing Nanny Zhu's expression, deeply afraid that Nanny Zhu would show the slightest displeasure. Fortunately, Zhu Momo didn't say anything. Instead, she smiled and revealed an understanding expression on her face. "That's right. Shen Gunyang will go to the Empress Dowager's place and Pang Guifei will also be there. We don't know what will happen, so it's good to eat more." This way, she would have the strength to argue with Imperial Consort Pang. Without the Empress Dowager present, Pang Yuan might do something excessive, but with the Empress Dowager present, she would more or less restrain herself and quarrel with Xin Yueji. It took a lot of energy to quarrel with Pang Yuan. Although she had never served Pang Yuan, she was still very clear about her character. Pang Yuan was unreasonable and could distort black and white. She could turn white into black and black into white. She saw that Xin Yueji was a quiet person. She was gentle and could generally be said, but in quarrel, she should be no match for Imperial Consort Pang. Fortunately, she had reminded the Emperor just now. According to the Emperor's love for her, he should not be at ease to let her go to Ci and Palace alone. At that time, with the Emperor by her side, there should be no problem. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble, WeChat followed, you read literature, chat about life and find bosom friends.